let me start out by saying that this is sort of a unique marker for us because it marks not an event, not a person, but a movement. And in 1946, Wilson was the epicenter of the tobacco industry in not only eastern North Carolina, but the world. And so it became the epicenter for a unionization movement that was actually run out of Michigan with the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Y'all may know this AFL-CIO today. Well, this was the CIO, and the CIO sent organizers down to eastern North Carolina and Wilson, Rocky Mount, Greenville to try to organize tobacco workers into a union. Most of these were African American women, and so it was not only a civil rights sort of movement and a workers' rights movement, but also a movement for women to organize. And this local union actually arose out of this fight to unionize tobacco workers. And their goal was to unionize 10,000 workers across eastern North Carolina.
My mother was the secretary for the AFL-CIO, and I got to see individuals such as Wilbur Harvey. I don't know if anybody remember Wilbur Harvey, but he was one of the leaders here. And she used to bring me here every time they had a union meeting, and I'll sit in the back and listen to what was going on. I had no idea what it was, none whatsoever. All I know is I had fun coming down here to the Union Hall. So I am really, really impressed. I am really happy. And when I tell the rest of my family that this is where all of them came, my brothers and sisters, we all came here because my mother brought us to, because she didn't have a babysitter, and made us sit in the back and listen. So I say this is a great thing. It helped Wilson at that time. I remember the marches that they had at the tobacco factory. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on at the time, but I understood that this was for our rights.
My dad was a member of the Charles H. Garden High School class of 1952. He was very active founding of the Alumni Association. And we would have cookouts, and folks would come from New York and all of these chapters all over the country. And I mean, we were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, but our pride in Garden High School, we didn't even go. We understood what an amazing place, incubator it had been for that generation of folks.
You can see why we call on Lisa.
It's really the culmination of a culmination of what I started, the reason I started Black, White, Awake, and that was in part to address gaps in the history of Wilson, in the way that our history is told. Wilson has always had a large African American population. That population they've been actors in history. They have made history, but those stories have been lost or obscured, and it was really important to me that we correct that erasure. And certainly, historic markers don't entirely do that. I mean, teaching history, the passing on of history, has to be continual. It's got to be. It's got to be. You have to be intentional about it, and you got to do it repeatedly. So having these markers here, if they'll spark a conversation, if they'll, move somebody to ask questions, or maybe to look for a little more information, then they've served their purpose. I really appreciate the Wilson County Historical Association's efforts to be more inclusive, to recognize ways in which historical associations haven't always been inclusive. The Historical Association has put its money where its mouth is, so to speak, in terms of taking concrete steps to show Wilson that the city belongs to all of us and that its history was made by all of us. This is the tip of the iceberg. Again, there are so many stories, since the founding of Wilson in 1849, African Americans have been a part of that story. More recently, that story has expanded to include Latinos, to include Asians. It's a tapestry. I was so happy to see the folks who came out today to witness the dedication. It represented a cross section of Wilson that reflects the demographics of the city and the demographics of our history. So I was really happy to see everyone who came out, and I really appreciate their support.